My name is Rebecca Bauman. I'm an artist based in Perth, Western Australia. I work predominantly in sculpture, installation and performance. I'm really interested in ideas about emotion and sort of human psychology and exploring that sort of quite broad field. One aspect has been looking at ideas about happiness and I guess the pursuit of happiness through sort of celebration and ritual. I'm also interested in colour as both a way to sort of explore some of those ideas and also as a subject in itself. Ideas about consciousness, perception, and I'm interested in those things because through exploring them, I guess it's a way to kind of consider what it means to be human, and also as well as being very subjective and personal, it's also the universal. My work is often kinetic or ephemeral, and I don't kind of consider myself a maker in a traditional sense. I think of myself more as, I think of my works as more assemblages of things that I found and sort of reconfigured. I am formally trained. I went to Curtin University of Technology and did a Bachelor of Arts. It took a long time till I really felt like it when someone asked you at a party like what profession you are to actually say I'm an artist. So it sort of happened, I feel like, gradually. Automated Colour Field was a work which was commissioned for New 11 by the Australian Centre for Contemporary Art, and I'd always use colour in my work, but I wanted to have colour as the subject and the object within the work, and also sort of emotion. It was kind of the first work, I guess, moving away from some of those sort of party materials and those ideas. And I was on a residency in Berlin for 6 months in 2010, where I was just working on the piece, and so I sort of knew those things. I was doing a lot of reading about art history, sort of psychology, colour theory, things like that. And I remember there was a show of colour field painting at the Guggenheim, and so there was all that sort of stream of things as well as material research going on, but I wasn't sort of sure exactly of the form it was going to take. And I remember I went down to Potsdam, I think, which is on the edges of Berlin, to see a show, I think, and I was in the train station, which is a bit old, and there was one of those old split-flap displays, which is the sort of those arrival departure boards which flip around and are quite evocative and quite beautiful. And I sort of thought, well, what would happen if you had replaced all that information with colour? And that was, I guess, the beginnings of that work where I could sort of start to see the form of it. There was quite a big process of then, I guess, reduction and to it coming to the form that you see it in today. Confetti International was the first work I made after a bit of a hiatus from art. The very beginnings of it was I was in a news agency and I saw $2 confetti and I just sort of bought it on a whim. And then I started throwing it around my room, and I kind of had this idea of what would happen if it was falling around you all the time, and wouldn't you be happy? Which was a naive, and it was also sort of a bit tongue-in-cheek idea, but I guess I like to sort of pose these questions, what would happen if, that's sort of a way that I often seem to start works. So at first it was this idea to make this perpetual machine which was fully autonomous and perfect and controlled and things, and then it sort of also became sort of stripped back to what was possible, and then it became this interactive piece which was quite clunky and didn't run very perfectly at all. Improvised smoke device came about from a sort of experience I had when I was in India. I did a research trip and visited the Holi festival, which is the festival of colours. It's like a Hindu festival. I think basically it's a sort of a celebration of the beginning of spring, and it's quite beautiful. You buy all these coloured powders and you put them in each other's faces and you hug and happy Holi, and that's kind of it, and you just kind of walk around and do that. But it's also, I guess, with any of those kind of, I guess even here, like days of celebration, people do sort of overindulge, and it became this quite palpable tension came where it was not sort of so friendly anymore, and it sort of felt a bit dangerous, and that we should probably get out of the situation before anything happened. And it was all fine, but I guess it was that sort of thing of there was such a fine line between, I guess, celebration and violence, and when hedonism goes too far. And that work was sort of came out of, I guess, trying to capture that sort of feeling and that knife edge, that dichotomy between those two things. A lot of my practice, I find, is research about materials and trying to find things. I use a lot of everyday materials that I find, and I like to activate them in ways to sort of change their inherent language. I guess I had a very specific body of work where I was working with materials which were sort of from like a party store, like balloons, streamers, confetti. I mean, those works were sort of specifically sort of looking at ideas about sort of happiness and celebration, and I sort of wanted to use things which people would sort of instantly recognise as being sort of associated with those sort of things, and then again, when you sort of play with them or subvert them, it sort of changes the meaning. I guess I kind of like to think about how I can use materials, sculpturally or in a way you haven't seen before. But a lot of my practice is driven by materials. I don't feel particularly tied to my studio in terms of something where maybe I get ideas. I find I get more ideas when I'm out in the world where I might see something or find a material. I work with a lot of people in terms of like pyrotechnicians, electronics experts, engineers, and I've got quite a good peer base which I will discuss ideas with. With automated colour field, I mean, I had some broad ideas of what I wanted the work to be, which were probably, that's a couple of months, and then I guess the material research phase was probably another sort of 3 months, and then the production was probably 2 or something like that. So about 8 months. With Confetti International, that work was made in 3 weeks because a show came up and I got put into it, and so it was a very quick process of actually making that piece. And with improvised smoke device, I had wanted to do that work for about 6 months before I actually worked out the way to do it. But that was a lot of time of just research and trying to find the right materials and how I was going to do it. So that was just like a lot of sort of, I guess, waiting and kind of giving up and then trying to find out again and then trying to find the context for it. A lot of my works have had their initial home in non-gallery sites. Confetti International was first shown in an old ice cream factory, which was in a nightclub, which is now an abandoned space in Perth. And with automated colour field, like I sort of wanted to make something which would sort of, I guess, fit in a gallery space, an institutional space. And I was also at the point in my practice where I did want to maybe make something which was a bit quieter and didn't have the same sort of maintenance which some of my work has. The works that are most interesting to me are when they're sort of multifaceted and maybe you can enjoy them on lots of different levels. With automated colour field, you can enjoy it on a really formal level of the play of colour and movement and, and the differences of the different colours next to each other, or you could sort of read more into it of sort of the links to art history and the kind of colour field painting, but then also ideas I had about sort of emotion and about whether or not sort of a sort of diagram of a day or how you sort of feel over a day. I mean, there's lots of different things that I was thinking about, but it's not so important to me that everyone takes all those things away from it, and everyone always brings their own subjectivity to a work and how they read a work, and I think that's what makes art interesting. So if someone has some real wacky thing that they think it is, that's great. The most important work which needs audience interaction is Confetti International, because without any engagement with it, it won't work. I mean, Confetti International kind of has this really fun entry point, but I mean, over time it's really exhausting, and actually someone at Prima Rivera had said to me it's really monstrous, and it kind of is, but then a lot of people would really disagree with that. I think, really, inspiration is everywhere if you're not closed off. And sometimes I find it frustrating when you're kind of waiting for those things, but you just have to kind of stay interested, stay curious, and just, observe and look. I think what I'd say to a young artist starting out would be that the most important thing is your work and is to make great work, because I think there's so much now sort of people think so much about marketing themselves, and people have websites before they've even done anything, and it's just like it's about making great work wherever you are. You might be in some tiny town somewhere or whatever, but it's just it shouldn't be about being famous, it should just be about your work, and that's probably the most important thing.